had an incredible job working with the Army Special Forces, and during obviously my last mission in South America, we were doing a drug raid. On our way out, our vehicle was ambushed. And because I was, not to get too graphic, but I was in the back seat hanging out the back of the window with my weapon. The vehicle was coming behind us. Our driver didn't make the corner. We went off a ravine and started flipping down. So the vehicle rolled over top of me and crushed my back, and I was face down in the water. So every time I was trying to take a breath, I just engulfed this dirty, contaminated water. Fortunately, I was still conscious. I was saved. I think it's an important story, but I was saved by an American missionary in the area. As he drove by, he saw the vehicle and a little bit of dust, and so he wasn't sure if that was a recent accident. So on his way down to go to the vehicle, he almost tripped over me because I was smashed down in the water, or else he probably never would have found me. Pulled me out, carried me to safety. The military did an incredible job. Within 24 hours, I was back in the U.S. And then I spent the next, I think, a couple of months in a coma. And they thought I had brain damage because I was face down in the water for a long time. And you know, it's a good thing I did, because I used to be like really, really smart. And I'm like even with everyone else, so it's not like that. But so they were, because they were asking me questions, I wasn't responding right. I had both my lungs, or one lung was collapsed, the other one was full of water. So I had chest tubes and everything else, and so I couldn't really speak, and I was just kind of moaning, but wasn't responding to their questions. And so someone asked me, you know, Jason, what's your favorite verse? And they said, although it was really hard to hear me because my voice was raspy, but I quoted Isaiah 40:31. It says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will walk and not be weary. They will run and not be faint." And I never knew that was it's just my favorite verse because I bought a coffee mug with my name on it, that verse. And, you know, I never realized how important that verse was to me until after that. And they said it was like I was reading it from a card, and I think then they knew, you know, everything was going to be okay. Well, everything, I guess, wasn't okay. I think it was, I had 3 young boys at the time. They were 1, 3, and 4. And about a year later, my wife ended up leaving. So the only way that was a good thing is that I knew I had to get better because I had to take care of 3 boys. But it just seemed like every time that I tried to get my life back together and things going again, I just said, you know, about the bone infection, I kept having to go in the hospital. And I spending total of 3.5 years, my first 7 years in the hospital. And it wasn't until I actually, probably shouldn't say this, but I snuck out of the VA hospital because I just got tired of staying there and weren't doing anything, and I went right over to Baylor. And they got me fixed up, and I have not had that situation since. So it seemed like, you know, I was trying to get my life back together, and I always saw the light at the end of the tunnel, but it seemed like it was more like a headlight from a train instead of light at the end of the tunnel. And then I went to an organization. Learned how to fly again, and with hand controls, and an organization called Challenge Air. They fly kids with disabilities. And Canine Companion, some puppy raisers, had a booth there, and that's the way I learned about Canine Companions. And I immediately, and that was about 8 years after my injury, I immediately went over there and applied for a dog. And 8 months later, I got this incredible dog, Nepal. And I just couldn't believe, you know, it's great to have a dog to do things for you. He did everything. He turned light switches on and off. He opened and closed doors behind me that I couldn't reach. Got my clothes out of the dryer. Never learned how to fold them yet, but you probably could if you wanted. You know, if he would pull me, if I was in a binder going uphill, he'd pull me. He'd give me a lot of dates. I'm telling you, the things he did for me was amazing. And one of the greatest things is that it seemed like because I was in a chair that everyone just kind of stayed clear from me. It was just, I didn't know if maybe I had a brain injury or a mental disability, I don't know, but like I'd go into a men's clothing store and I was with a female, they would walk right by me and ask, you know, her, can I help you? You know, and she's like, oh, it does look like I need to buy men's clothes. I mean, it was just ongoing, and it wasn't until like, she's heard this many times, she's getting bored. Down. Come on, girl, down. I'll talk about you in a minute. Whenever you're ready, down. All right. God, where was I? But it seemed like once I got my dog that people just gravitated towards me. I was no longer the guy in the wheelchair. I was the guy with the cool dog. And that just opened up so many doors for me. In fact, that's what started my speaking career. It's just through that, it just enhanced my life in so many ways. I got really healthy again. I started participating in races. I was on the military Paralympic team. All this was because once I got my dog, it's like sometimes when you stay in bed, I deal with a lot of nerve pain, and unfortunately, and I still do. And sometimes when you have, I don't sleep well, sometimes you don't have a reason to get out of bed, you don't. And it was my dog every day that got me out of bed. I mean, he knew when I was hurting too, but he always came to my bed. He's like, come on, let's get up and go. And I always made a point to get out, to do something, just because of my dog. And that's what, got me back into shape and started running races again. And Nepal is an incredible dog. And I'll tell you a quick story, just to tell you how much these dogs enhanced my life. Is that a couple of years ago, I was training for my first marathon. I'd always been a dream of mine to do a marathon. And I was 29 when I got injured 15 years ago. And our goal in our special ops unit, you had to do that. You ran 30 miles for your 30th birthday. So I started training for it. And then I got injured. I couldn't run again. And I always thought I'd walk again. I always believed that. And so my teammates from my team and stuff gave me a hard time. I said, you just got hurt, so you don't have to run your 30 miles. And so I tell you what, when I turned 40, I could run a marathon. Well, I thought technology would get better and I'd be able to do it. And then when I turned 40, I realized that they had these wheelchair racers. So I started working on that. And so when I was, a couple of years ago, I guess I was 42. So I started training for this marathon. Trained every day. And actually it was a great organization said they wanted to sponsor me and do the Marine Corps Marathon. And I wasn't sure if they let Air Force people run in the Marine Corps Marathon, but they said as long as you don't win, it's okay. So I did it on purpose. So I started training for it, but I only had about 5 months, which is pretty short. When you're pushing in a chair 26.2 miles with your arms, it's a big workout. So during the middle of my training, I found out that I had another bone infection that came up on my heel. I think it was I had a blister there, and I had scuba dived in some water that was apparently contaminated it. And so by the time they realized everything, the bone was infected, and went to the doctor, and he said, yeah, your bone's infected, we're going to have to amputate your leg. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I just couldn't believe it. I actually just started walking a little bit again, and I was like, I cannot believe this. I mean, I felt like I got my life back together. Things are going good, and now you want to take my leg. And so I was there with Nepal, and he said otherwise it could be a year of treatment, antibodies, and we may not be able to save it. And I said, well, but he recommended this is what you need to do, and I trusted him. And so he left the room for a minute, and I was sitting there with Nepal, and kind of talking to him audibly, and I was like, you know what, let's do this, let's get it done, and let's still do this marathon. And the doctor came back in, and he said, yeah, let's get this done. And I said, but can I still do this marathon? He's like, yeah, you're crazy. He goes, there's no way. You're going to be a couple weeks in the hospital, you got to get a prosthetic. I'm like, I don't need a prosthetic, I'm a wheelchair racer, and I can modify my chair a little bit. He goes, well, things go good, possibly, but it's only 2 months away. Being a surgery like that's going to set you way back. I just doubt it. I said, well, if you think I can do it, I know that I can do it. So you know what, I was sitting there, it's like I had two options really. Either I could go back to the depression I had when I first learned I was paralyzed, wouldn't be able to walk again, or I could follow the dream I've always had of doing this marathon. So 2 days after I got out of the hospital, I was back in the gym training, and went to DC, and just to make matters even more difficult, that's when Hurricane Sandy moved through the day after it flooded New York. I was like, are you kidding me? And normally it would be so bad in the rain, but when you're in a racing wheelchair, you don't grab, I don't know if everyone can see, but you don't grab the roads like this. You have these special gloves, and you actually hit against it like this. So rain doesn't do it very well. I mean, you're just sliding and going still. So I knew it was going to be much more difficult. So I was training for about a 3-hour time, and it had taken me 4 hours. But I just remember I crossed that finish line, and a friend of mine that was there with a Secret Service, good friend of mine, who's now a big CCI supporter too, was there with my dog. And all I kept thinking about is that I just want to finish and see my dog. And I remember going through the finish line and giving my dog a hug, and I was like, this is the difference. If I didn't have my dog with me, I don't think I would have done this marathon. I think it just shows the way these dogs really enhance your life. Unfortunately, Nepal passed away earlier this year. But Canine Companion is such a great organization. They got me a dog within 2 months. And once you're part of the CCI family, you're there for life. And as soon as they heard about it, they said, we know how close you and Nepal were. It's your decision when you want to get a new dog, but we'll be there for you when you're ready. And Nepal and I have done so much. We spoke at so many different organizations. We taught people about the service dogs and laws of disability. We've educated schools and Boy Scouts and everything else. And it's like, you know what, I want to finish what Nepal and I started. And I immediately got on the list. And they searched around. They have 4 classes a year that they have the team training for 2 weeks. And the next class was already filled, but they said, you know what, we found you a dog at Santa Rosa, a couple of dogs I think you'd work with. And so 2 weeks later, I was back to California. So it'd be nice to do it here when they have this facility built. I'm going to go back to California. So I went to California, I got this, I can talk about you, Rue, and I got this incredible dog, Rue. And I remember we were there at the facility, and where Charles Schultz, helped do that. There was a lot of Snoopy statues there and everything. And I was with Rue, and it was the day after graduation. I was with my dad, and we actually sprinkled some of Nepal's ashes right there on the facility, and the statue of Snoopy in the background. And what a better person to look after Nepal than Snoopy. And I was sitting there talking about how great my dog was, and I told Rue, I said, you got some really big paws to fill, but I know you could do it. And she's been absolutely incredible. Canine Companion does such a great job. When you go to team training for 2 weeks, you work with several different dogs, and all the dogs are trained the same, but all dogs have different personalities. So they matched a dog that was suitable to me. I'm a pretty high energy person, and I got a very high energy dog. I know you can't see that now, she's laying there, but I guarantee if I take the vest off, she would run around in circles all over this place. She knows if she's working or not. But this is a great organization, and I can't tell you how proud I am to represent them with what I do and what they do. They absolutely change the lives of individuals, and that's why I'm such a big advocate for CCI, and I speak all over the country for them, and especially veterans, because I know it's hard to get back on your feet when your feet don't work, but to have a companion, I call him my battle buddy, to have me with me all the time makes a difference. So thank you for your support.